Hey,
All right, welcome. Welcome to Two Doctors Homestead. My name's Daniel. I have Chris with me and Jay Strangely Strange. Thanks for
hey.
being here. Thanks for being part of the book club. This is the first meeting of the Dystopian Book Club, and no guarantee we'll always read dystopian books, but we are calling it the Dystopian Book Club. Um, so tonight we're looking at Animal Farm. We got George Orwell's Animal Farm. My plan at most is to cover the first six chapters, right? So there's been a few people that have joined the book club that couldn't make it tonight. And partially because of that, I don't want to close out the book, right? So if they've already read the book, if they've got some thoughts on the book, I want to kind of save that, right? So let's we'll stop it halfway if we get that far, right? We're not going to, who knows how long it's going to take to get through it, being the first meeting, but we won't close the book. So if they've read the book, if you're watching this, if you read the book and you still want to come on, you've got thoughts, you want to share that, we'll keep that open, right? I was saying every 2 weeks, but in 2 weeks is Christmas and 3 weeks is New Year's. So seeing where we end, I'll kind of get a consensus and say, do we want to meet in a week or do we want to meet in 4 weeks? Right. Or maybe move things around a little bit. But obviously, we're not going to meet on Christmas Eve and we're
Mm.
probably not going to meet on New Year's Eve. Right. So it's either going to be in a week or it could be, we could push it out for 4 weeks. But as I said, we're not going to close out the book tonight. I think there's a few people that said they read the book and just couldn't make it. So I've got my copy of Animal Farm here. So when we were talking a little bit about technology, I went with a Kindle. I was hardcore physical book guy for a long time, and we got the Kindle. So we got the Kindle to use for notes for making the videos because it has Word on it and everything. Like, okay, I can keep my notes here. And then one day I downloaded a book. I'm like, oh my god, this is so easy. So I got
Mm.
it. I got the technology. I got the Kindle, and now I'm kind of hooked on it because if I want a book, you just boom, the book's just there.
It's
Mm.
instant.
So
Yeah,
it's
I have
it's
Kindle too. It's so
yeah, it's
when you name
it's
a
it's
book, all
sort of
right, all
easy.
right, $5.
Yeah, super easy. But here we go. We had Animal Farm. Wanted to show the title here. George Orwell Animal Farm. So as far as the format goes, and we can change it up over time. The way I'm set up tonight is as we hit a chapter, I wrote a summary about each chapter. So I want to read a summary about the chapter. You guys can stop me at any time and then kind of open up, right? And I've got some
Mhm.
questions in mind, but you guys can jump in with your thoughts. First impressions. How is the scene described? Can you relate to the characters, character growth, memorable quotes, moments that stood out, stuff like that. But we can keep it pretty flexible, right? It's not. There's no grades. There's no grades on the book report. But I did feel like I was writing a book report as I did my notes. I'm like, man, I haven't had to write a book report in a long time. This feels like work here. Feels like I'm back in school. All right. So Animal Farm published August 17th, 1945. So something interesting that I wanted to look on it because 1945 is historically significant is not when it was published, but when was it written. So George Orwell wrote the manuscript between 1943, and 1944 after his experiences during the Spanish Civil War. So in terms of what happened in 1945 was the end of World War II. So it was kind of a big date, like big historical date. World War II
Mm.
ended, but when he wrote it, maybe World War II wasn't ending, right? Maybe
Mm.
things weren't looking as good in 43 and 44. And I think that does set
Well,
some of the
nobody
tone. So I
knew
think,
the war was going to end in 45. I mean, nobody knew it.
right.
It was supposed to be an invasion of Japan that could go on for a decade.
Yeah, right,
Mm.
right. And I think in this case, maybe not all books, but in this case, I think it's important to kind of take into context not only when it was written, but what was happening at the time in the world that certainly would have influenced the author, right? There's
Mm.
messages in here. He was trying to tell a story, trying to share a message, give a message to future generations. And there's relevancy in the fact that we were in the middle of World War II. That was a big, ugly war. So, real quick, who was George Orwell? His actual name was Eric Arthur Blair, but he'll always be George Orwell to me, 1903 to 1950. So, he looks like he died at about 47, which is kind
Wow.
of scary because I'm 46. He didn't live very long.
Mhm.
English novelist, essayist, journalist, and critic. His work characterized by lucid prose, social criticism, opposition to totalitarianism, and support of democratic socialism. And of course, well known for Animal Farm and 1984. I don't want to go to 1984 next, but in terms of having the Dystopian Book Club, we'll probably get to it at some point. I think that one's well worth reading. And I feel like this book certainly qualifies as dystopian. So some interesting points, and I'm just going to give this to you. So the pigs, not a spoiler, represent key members of the Bolshevik leadership. Napoleon represents Joseph Stalin. Snowball represents Leon Trotsky. And Squealer represents, and I'm not going to pronounce this right, Vaclav Molotov. And the only reason I'm mentioning that is as you're reading the book, it's very easy to relate it to like current events and the current government and a lot of things going on in the world. It's like, nope, he wrote it about the Russians, the Bolsheviks, right? It was not written about the Republicans or the Democrats or anybody like that. This was a long time ago. Another term we'd already talked about, anthropomorphic, which means having human characteristics, or anthropomorphize, I think is it. I'm killing that one. It's something I got beat up on in my dissertation all the time by my mentor, which is to give human characteristics to something that's not human, right? And we're going to do that, and I'm going to do that. That was the intent of the book, right? Normally you get a slap on the wrist. Hey, my phone didn't write something. It's a phone. You know, those kind of things, right? Because it's a phone, it can't write. Hey, it's a dog, it can't talk. Well, these dogs can talk. So we're gonna ignore that because that was intentional. All right. So any comments on that? I'm gonna jump in and start kind of digging through chapter 1. If you guys are
thanks for those
I'm good.
thanks for those things. Yeah, I picked Stalin, but I didn't. Trotsky was. I was wondering who Snowball was. Yeah. And who was the other guy?
Yeah. I'm Vyachheslav. You might be better at pronouncing that than I am. Vaclav, and then Molotov is the last name.
I thought the wise old pig was Lenin.
Snowball was Lenin Trotsky.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to give away any spoilers. It's just sometimes the book feels very current, and just want to throw that out there that it's not. It's actually not, right? All right, so I'm going to get into chapter 1. As I said, I did a little book report here. I'm going to read out my summary of chapter 1. You guys stop me at any point. It's not super long. It's, but I'll jump into it, and then let's talk about chapter 1. So we're just going to kind of dissect the book one chapter at a time. All right, so the story opens to a scene of a drunken farmer walking down for the night and going to bed. The story cuts to a scene of Old Major, the prized white middle boar, on a raised platform under a lantern. He was 12 years old and had grown rather stout. The boar had a strange dream the previous night that he wanted to communicate to the other animals. That night, with Major on his platform, the other animals gathered to hear him speak. Once the animals gathered, he addressed the group and used the term comrades. The pig goes on to describe his dream about the nature of life on the farm as an animal, using words like forced, miserable, laborious, and short to describe a life that ends being slaughtered with hideous cruelty. The pig rallies the animals against man as a perpetrator of all injustices against the farm animals and only creatures that consume without producing. Major calls to unite all animals in equality as one against man to create a free society for all the animals. The speech ends with Major sharing the song he wrote, The Beasts of England. Then the chapter ends with the farmer waking up to the uproar of the animals. Thinking there was a fox in the yard, he went out with his gun and shot into the wall of the barn, which scared all the animals. So I've got the main characters for chapter 1 was Mr. Jones of Manor Farm, and then Major or Old Major or Wellington Beauty. So when he was a show pig, he was Wellington Beauty. And then my observation, the term comrade used in that context, in that chapter throughout the book, is both a nod to the Russian Revolution as well as a basis of an ideology of equality amongst the animals and a point of division between animals and men. Right? He's saying we're comrades, they're not. And then a side note, if you watch the movie instead of reading the book, or if you've done both, in the movie, the shot from the shotgun killed Major. So he stepped outside, fired the shotgun, killed Major. In the book, it didn't end that way.
In the first book, the first movie I saw was a cartoon version. It didn't kill him either.
Okay.
So
Yeah, we just a couple nights ago figured, hey, we'll watch the movie, and it did. The shotgun killed the pig.
Do you think that maybe Major is maybe a nod to Marx, because he was the one that came up with all of these kind of ideals and then died a long time before? Right. That's sort of what I was kind of maybe
probably. Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good observation. No, I think so. No, that was a good one. I don't know why it didn't occur to me at all, but no, absolutely, I think it was. All right, so some conversation teasers. How well was the scene described? Did you feel like you were in the farm? Were you in the barn? As a writer, how well do you feel like you wrote the scene?
I thought it was pretty well written. I mean, as far as feeling like you were there, and we can only assign human values to animals, but that their frustration that everything they produce is taken from them.
Yeah, I do that to my eggs. I go out every day. I take the eggs away. Yeah.
But it's human. We assign human values to things. Your bike gets cold at night. Does it? No, I don't think so.
No, he lost his internet. Hopefully, he comes back in.
CME.
It's all right. It could be a CME. They could have got wiped out. That might have been it. Check it. We do the prepping. Check the news. Did he just get EMP'd? Could be. Yeah. Hopefully not. Might have been an EMP. All right. So Jay, your thoughts. So we talked about how well was the scene described. Did you feel like you were in the barn? Were you in the farm?
I liked it. It was very simple yet descriptive language. Like sometimes I find authors, they just go a little bit too overboard and try and use all these words, and you sometimes get a bit bogged down in that. Whereas he just used simple language, simple descriptions, and but yet it was really emotive. Like it brings you in, and like I could see all of the creatures there, especially when the ducks came in.
Yeah.
I liked that.
Right,
yeah.
The ducks marching in. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree on that. And that's a good observation on using simple language. Read The Road recently, and there was just, I think the term's alliterations, where the author's going out of their way to describe something. You're like, you went too far. Like it's, it's too much. It's too deep. You're trying to be too fancy, and you lost me. You lost me in the description. So I think I appreciate the simpleness of the writing because it's able to set the scene. And then I was going to say, can you relate to the characters? And I think you nailed Marx pretty good on that one. Did I lose internet? Might have lost strangely. I will pause for a second to come back into it. See if we're losing everybody. I'm hoping it's okay. I'm still live. All right. Excellent. I'm still alive here. EMP didn't get me. You. There we go. Okay. All right. You're back. Right. I was getting worried now. We've lost two people. I'm like, is it me? Do I need to go outside, look for mushroom clouds? Like, what's going on here? What just happened? Next, the lights are out. It's no good. It's no good. Okay. All right. I would say any character growth. I feel like not a lot in the first chapter. Certainly memorable quotes, like the pig really. Major, he gave his speech. He motivated the animals. All right. So I'll jump on. If that's it for chapter 1, I'll jump on to chapter 2. I'll read you guys what I wrote on chapter 2, and we can kind of go from there. All right, chapter 2. The chapter opens with the death of Major, who died peacefully in his sleep 3 days after the meeting. The scene is set in early March. It is written that there was much secret activity over the next 3 months. The more intelligent animals had a completely new outlook on life. They did not know when the rebellion would take place and had no reason to think it would be in their lifetime, yet they saw clearly that they had a duty to prepare it. And some of this stuff I just pulled from the book, right? The story introduces Snowball, Napoleon, and Squealer, some of the main characters going forward. Napoleon is described as large, fierce-looking Berkshire boar, not much of a talker, but with a reputation of getting his way. Snowball is described as vivacious, quicker in speech, more inventive, but was not considered to have the same depth of character as Napoleon, which is interesting because that I pulled directly from the book in terms of not having the same depth of character, because I didn't pick that up as Napoleon have like deep depth of character. But it is in the book, right? Then Squealer is described as having very round cheeks, twinkling eyes, nimble movements, and a shrill voice. He was a brilliant talker, and when he was arguing some difficult point, he had a way of skipping from side to side and whisking his tail, which was somehow very persuasive. Others said Squealer could turn black into white, and I think it's just his persuasion, right? And we see his manipulation. The three pigs expanded old Major's teachings into a complete system of thought, which he called animalism. At the beginning, the other animals rejected animalism, speaking of their loyalty to Mr. Jones, their master, as he feeds them, and without him, they would starve to death. Others pointed out why should they care what happens after they're dead, and that if the rebellion was going to happen anyway, what difference does it make if they work for it or not, which are all interesting points. Molly, so she was introduced, the white mare, asked if there will be sugar after the rebellion. To be told no, they had no means of making sugar on the farm. Now, Moses was a tame raven and pet to Mr. Jones. He attempted to subvert the rebellion with stories of Sugar Cane Mountain, a place situated somewhere in the sky where all animals go when they die, where it's Sunday every day, there's clover all year round, lump sugar and linseed cake grew on the hedges. So if you went to Sugar King Mountain, when you die, there was no reason to revolt. The two most faithful disciples of animalism were cart horses, Boxer and Clover. The farmer is described as a hard master and capable farmer that had fallen on hard times after losing a lawsuit. He drank more than was good for him and would lounge in his Windsor chair for days at a time. His men were idle and dishonest. The fields were full of weeds. The buildings needed
Chris
roofing.
has
The
left a
hedges were
message,
neglected.
sorry.
Oh, okay, let's see. Oh, he's there. All right, I got to add him back in. There we go. He's back.
Yay.
I can't hear you guys.
All right. No problem.
Yay.
So then the rebellion starts. The rebellion started on Midsummer's Eve. Mr. Jones had gone to the Willington to get drunk at the Red Lion. The men had milked the cows and went out rattling without bothering to feed the animals. That evening, the animals still unfed. One of the cows broke the door of the store shed, and all the animals began to help themselves to food. Mr. Jones and his men heard the noise, came out with whips and hands, lashing all directions. This was more than the animals could bear. With one accord, they flung themselves upon their tormentors. The situation spun out of control. With a sudden uprising of animals, the men were forced to retreat. With the animals in pursuit, they left the farm. Miss Jones saw what had happened from the bedroom window, gathered her things, and fled the farm. And I think that's really the only real mention of Miss Jones, other than at the very beginning. Having found themselves victorious, the animals galloped in a body around the farm to make sure it was clear. They then broke into the harness room, gathered all the bits, nose rings, dog chains, knives, and plugged them down the well. All the reins, halters, binders, nose bags, along with the whips, were thrown in a rubbish pile burning in the yard. The next day, there was much celebration. The animals toured the farm, the plowland, the hayfield, orchards, pool, and the spinney. They eventually broke into the house and searched it in awe. Now, a good point was they agreed to keep it as a museum, right? And that's something that changes later. Eventually, the animals settled down in the breakfast, and Snowball announced that there was a matter to attend to before they could start their day. The pigs revealed that they had taught themselves to read and write from a spelling book they found in the trash. Snowball painted out Manor Farm on the sign leading to the farm, painted the name Animal Farm in its place. Snowball also painted the commandments of animalism on a tarred wall. And then the chapters closed with the animals headed out to the hayfield to begin the harvest. So chapter 2, I think there was a lot. There was a lot going on in chapter 2. The animals took control of the farm. The pigs announced that they taught themselves to read, which is something we were kind of talking about earlier which is by seeking education, by educating themselves, they rose above, right? To the dismay of others, they rose above the rest.
Mm.
So that is my summary, my little summary on chapter 2 there. So for Chris, for Jay, how well was the scene described? Not my summary, but of the book. The scene described by Orwell. Were you there? Were you there in the revolution? Were you there when the animals stormed the food house?
Well, I have the advantage because I watched the movie, the cartoon version. So when he described it, I already had the scene in my mind of what was going on. That's not always a smart thing to do, but that's what I did.
Yeah. How about you, Jay?
Yeah, I like green fields and and the side of the barn, like I can even see the paint and such. And just to kind of maybe step back to the writing thing that you're talking about, like we even do that ourselves now. Like I'm really into the Aboriginal First Nations in Australia, and like all of the complex societies that they had, but they didn't actually have any written language, and that was kind of used as a weapon to kind of justify a lot of the colonization and the stealing of their culture, because they were like, oh, they're just dumb savages.
They don't have a language,
and a lot of their history was oral history, and they have very deep and complex song lines. And some of the stories, like the scientists, they're even saying like, yeah, look, this happened in the past, that happened in the past, and they're telling about it. So they had a very deep, and so, yeah, it's just interesting how in here, when you were just mentioning it, and that just came into my head, how the education of writing and reading can be used as a way to subjugate, but doesn't have much substance, Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right.
Yeah.
No, that's an excellent point, excellent analogy. And I think that plays out in the book, which is to say those that educated themselves, not as a commentary, hey, is college. I know there's a lot of controversy around college right now, but the people that spent the time, or the animals that spent the time to educate themselves, rose up quickly, and those that just kind of did what they were told end up being subjugated again. Right. So yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's an important nugget in the story. I feel like it was intentional.
Well, even later on, they talk about building a school of bricks.
Yeah.
And so, well, we got to educate the pigs. It isn't good enough that they're educating them in the front room or whatever room. No, we have to build a formal building to educate the pigs.
Right.
And the class divide that created.
Yeah, it was absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you see it right away. The class divisions. Hey, we are more educated. We're going to be more important. We are the leaders. They say that very openly. Like, hey, our job is super important. They use fear. If we're not well taken care of, Mr. Jones is going to come back. I mean, there's a lot of that out there. Yeah, absolute class divisions start building.
Well,
and you can even see it.
Go ahead, Jay.
They kept snowball threats in the neighbors' pastures and stuff that he's going to come back and do bad things.
Yeah, then we're seeing that today, even like just with the whole, the terrorists will get us, and the misinformation and the disinformation. We need to censor everyone, and yeah, you
absolutely see. I know, and that's why I did that opening. Like, it was written in 1945. Yet, I mean, the analogies we see it today, right? And are we seeing it today because things have come full circle, or because they're just always this way? And I don't know. Maybe I'm not old enough to know that one. All right. So some of the main characters, Mr. Jones and his men, they showed cruelty and cowardice, described as lazy and drunken. Major, this was the end. This was his end of the story, the end at the beginning of chapter 2. But then obviously his legacy goes on. We see Snowball step up to a leadership position. Boxer and Clover were the first main disciples of animalism. We get introduced to Napoleon and Squealer, but right now they just seem like regular dudes. Molly, the white mare, was against the revolution, and then Moses the raven was a friend to Mr. Jones, and he was trying to convince everyone that they go to the great mountain in the sky when they die. All right. Any other thoughts on chapter 2?
Just with the milk, it opened like at the end when the cows. I'm just going through it myself. The milk at the end, it kind of foreshadows, I guess, in a way, what's going to be sort of happening later on, because it doesn't actually say anything happens to the milk except for the fact that it goes missing after they've milked it.
Right. You're right. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't have that in my notes, but that is a good point. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to jump into chapter 3 here. Got a little bit written. The chapter opens with the animals toiling and sweating to bring in the hay, a harvest that was a bigger success than they had hoped, as it was difficult to use implements designed for humans. All of the animals worked together to gather the hay. Even the ducks and hens toiled in the sun, gathering tiny wisps of hay in their beaks. All through the summer, the work of the farm went on like clockwork. The animals were happy as they never conceived it possible to be. Every mouthful of food was an acute pleasure now that it was truly their own food produced by themselves for themselves, which I'm big on that. I had to pause right there. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I get that. Like having a garden, raising your own animals. I mean, it tastes better. You take, I think, way more pride in your food when you put in that time to actually make it. You know, I can 100% relate to that. I think we were already talking about that a little bit earlier, the idea of being self-sufficient. Boxer stood out and was an admiration to everyone. He was hardworking during Jones's time and now did the work of 3 horses. Everyone worked according to his capacity. Even the hens and ducks saved 5 bushels of corn at harvest by gathering straight grains. On Sunday, there was no work, and after breakfast, there was a ceremony of hoisting the animal farm flag, followed by a meeting of the animals. All of the week of the coming work was discussed. Resolutions were put forward, and voting occurred. It was during these debates that Napoleon and Snowball were most active and never in agreement. The meetings ended with the singing of the Beasts of England. There were reading and writing classes for all the animals. The pigs could read and write perfectly at that point. The dogs learned to read fairly well, but were only interested in reading the 7 commandments. Muriel the goat could read better than the dogs. Some of the animals could only read a few letters and others not even that. I know we've kind of already talked about that. Napoleon had no interest in the committees and felt the education of the young was more important than anything. Yeah. Jessie and Bluebird had given birth to 9 sturdy puppies. As soon as they were weaned, Napoleon took them away from their mothers, saying that he would make himself responsible for their education. He took them to the loft in such seclusion that the rest of the farm forgot of their existence. As the chapter closes, the pigs make claim of the milk and eggs, with Squealer giving a speech about how even though they dislike the milk and apples, they must eat them to preserve their health because they're absolutely necessary to the well-being of a pig. As the pigs are the brain workers and manage the entire organization, it is for the sake of the other animals that they eat the milk and eggs or milk and apples to stay their best, else Jones would come back and retake the farm.
Sorry. Sorry.
No, it's all right.
As like the COP, that the climate change is like, no, we have to fly our private jets to.
Right. We don't want to. We don't want to. We hate it. As much as we hate it, we hate it. It pains us. Pains us so much. Yeah.
Oh my God.
No, it's amazing. It really is. You read that, you're like, yeah. Oh, here we go. I'll share this one here. Oh, man. It's his biggest lie ever. I know pigs. Pigs would never do that. Real pigs are actually really nice. These pigs, not so nice. Yeah. And this was Squealer's first big manipulation, and really gaslighting, which was a new term at the time, saying we don't want to eat the milk and apples, but it's important for our brains. If not, Mr. Jones is coming back. You got to give us the milk and apples. Yeah.
So because we're kind of going along the lines that this is like a semi-observation of the communist upheaval in the Soviet Union, do you think that these moments that he's describing here actually were correlating to actual events that happened during that revolution? Like,
I don't know. I don't know on that. I think it's possible. I'm sure there's a lot of that in there because, and as you said, like the timing of the book, his experience in the Spanish Civil War.
mm,
I'd like
mm,
to learn more about that. And as I said, I might read his book he wrote about his time in the Spanish Civil War. I feel like there's a
sounds
lot tucked
interesting.
in here. I feel like
Mm,
there's a lot of
mm,
that tucked in the book. Yeah. Even in the 1984, where he does the 4 fingers versus 5 fingers, that was a nod to a Soviet plan where they were going to do 5 years worth of work in 4 years. So that was the 5. You say 4, we say 5, kind of thing. So I think there is. I
Yeah,
think there's a
yeah,
lot of that buried deep in here.
yeah.
Yeah, a
Mhm,
lot of his observations, his dislike, perhaps, for what he saw going on.
mhm,
Yeah,
mhm,
yeah, I would say I think you're absolutely right on that. So same question, and there was a lot. This was certainly more than one scene, right? You have the full harvest. You've got the, uh,
taking
uh,
of the pups,
yeah,
the
yeah. I
taking of
was
the
gonna say,
pups into the. As soon as that
right,
happened, I went, I know exactly where this is going. Like, he's just created himself a bodyguard group that's loyal to
yeah,
him. Mm,
right,
mm,
yeah. And there's
mm,
once again parallels, even though it was written a long time ago. Parallels now of no, education of the children is the most important. And we will do that. We will do that personally. Don't worry. We're going to take them aside. We're going to educate them as we know they should be educated. Don't even
mhm,
worry about it.
mm,
We got it. We got it. This is
mm,
the most
mm,
important thing. And in
mm,
that sense, for his goal, it's true, right? For that sense,
mm,
it was true that it was the most important thing for him.
mm, mm.
All right, let's see private chat. Okay, so I was checking on the chat, and I'm not looking at most of the comments. Hey, we got Jane Doe. Thank you for jumping in, Jane. What do you think they did to the children after the revolution of 1917? I don't know. I'm suspecting something similar. So I don't know on that, Jane. You'll have to tell us. Tell us in the comments. I'm assuming something similar. All right. So that was chapter 3. How are you doing on time, Jay? Strangely
Yeah,
strange.
I've got a bit more time. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I don't want to run over. I said I don't expect to finish the book this time. We're just working through it. We get as far as we get. All right. So chapter 4. We'll jump into chapter 4 here. The chapter opens with news of the animal farm revolution spreading across the land. Snowball and Napoleon would send out flights of pigeons with instructions to mingle with the animals in neighboring farms, tell them the story of the rebellion, and teach them the song Beasts of England. So everyone had to learn the song Beasts of England. You hear about Mr. Jones spending his time in the tap room of the Red Lion, complaining to anyone that could listen of the monstrous injustice he had faced. We are introduced to the neighboring farms, Mr. Plinkington of Foxwood and Mr. Frederick of Pinchfield. They were both frightened. Both the farmers were frightened by the rebellion of Animal Farm and were anxious to prevent their own animals from learning too much. I like this part. They spread disinformation about Animal Farm, saying that the animals were fighting amongst themselves and the entire thing would be over in a fortnight. As the
Mm,
stories of Animal Farm spread across the Beasts of England was known everywhere. Any animal caught singing the song was flogged on the spot. So the farmers were worried and immediately started spreading disinformation about what was going on. Oh, no, it's horrible over there. It's horrible over there. You don't
mm,
want to do that.
mm,
Early in October, Jones and his men, with a half a dozen others from Foxwood and Pinchfield, returned to the farm, all carrying sticks, except for Mr. Jones, who had a gun. The animals had prepared, and Snowball had studied a book of Julius Caesar. So the animals were ready for the attack. Snowball had studied Caesar, and they were ready to go. As the humans approached the farm, the animals attacked. The battle raged on, and at one point, Mr. Jones shot his gun at Snowball, which caused pellets to score bloody streaks across his back. As the battle raged, the animals chased the men around the yard. They gored, kicked, bit, and trampled them. All of the animals took up the defense of the farm, and the humans were forced to retreat from the farm. From the fight, one sheep was killed and one man was killed, which in the movie is interesting. He didn't die. In the book, as far as I could tell, he died. Sorry, as the chapter ends, the animals celebrate their victory. Snowball and Boxer were awarded medals, Animal Hero First Class, and they capture Mr. Jones' gun, which would be used ceremoniously going forward on special holidays. So I had main characters. Snowball showed leadership and bravery in battle. Boxer was remorse for killing a man in battle. And then that was kind of the introduction of Mr. Frederick and Mr. Plinkington. We change your parents killed, children raised, loving their murderers. Yeah, Stockholm Syndrome. And then read farm owners as kings at the time. Animals are the common people. I have to take a look. Yeah, no, thanks, Jane. I'll definitely take a look at that. All right, Strangely Strange. What do you think? What do you think about the battle of taking they took the farm, but the battle, the first attempt to retake the farm by the farmers?
I think it's sweet how Boxer gets really sad, like that he hurts the child or hurts the person. It just kind of shows that like all of the main characters of it, they just want to live happily and free. They're not actually wanting to have to do all this violence. And so it just shows the real difference kind of between, especially with Napoleon once he eventuates. But yeah, and then Molly goes missing as well. She ends up defecting.
Right. Yeah. I think that's first part of chapter 5. But yeah, in the fight, I didn't have that in my notes. But yeah, in the fight, I think they found her.
Yeah.
No, you're fine. Don't even worry about it. I think you're right though when they say she wasn't like there for the fight. She was hiding in the barn. She didn't want to have anything to do with it. Yeah. No, you're right on that. Yeah, it was quite a scene. I think it was written very well. You know, the battle for the farm, and having farm animals, some livestock. I tell you, if they were mad at you, they could definitely hurt you. They could. I mean, we had 2 pigs. They were 600 pounds each. They were very sweet. But if they wanted to pick you up and throw you across the yard, they could pick you up and throw you across the yard.
When I was a kid,
when
I was a kid, we had a turkey, and we'd fatten it up. We'd just had the one, and we'd fatten it up, and I'd always go like this to it, whoa! And this thing, man, it attacked me, man, and it's got its wings, beating me with its wings and its claws, and I had scratches all over me for weeks just from this one turkey. Yeah, because I was just teasing it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I picked up a turkey, and the wing popped me. Just the side wing. The side wing popped me right in the jaw. It felt like I got punched in the jaw for like 3 days. I'm like, holy cow, this thing still hurts right here. Just the wing. Just caught me with his wing. I mean, very, very powerful. But even our little coons, they're not even 100 pounds. You know, they're tiny little pigs. We'll be sitting outside and we'll let them out and give them treats and stuff. They'll go under the chair and lift you up. Like they can lift me, they're a quarter of my weight or something like that. They can just come over there and lift me up. Yeah.
You guys should Google. You guys should Google what happens to trucks when they hit a wombat. You know, the wombats from Australia. Yeah, mate. They're like just little tanks. Yeah, man. Yeah.
So, I can imagine.
And they're just little things.
Right.
Yeah.
No, animals are strong.
Everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. Yeah. So I could see if the animals were really united against the people, you'd have a hard time. You know, obviously, if all the guys had guns and were just shooting them, that would have a hard time with that one. All right. Should we jump on? We'll go to the next chapter. I got chapter 5. I've got a lot written on chapter 5 here, but I'll try to go through it quickly. As the chapter opens, we read about Molly, which we were just talking about, who obviously did not want to work, complained a lot, found excuses, and spent much time gazing at her own reflection in the drinking pool. Molly was confronted by Clover, who had observed her interacting with one of the men from the neighboring farms. Molly denied all this, but later disappeared, having run off to join the neighboring farm. And we were just talking about that. January brought a bitter winter where the earth was like iron and nothing could be done in the fields. Time was passed with many meetings in the barn, and the pigs occupied themselves planning out work for the coming season. Snowball and Napoleon continued to disagree on everything. Should they grow oats, barley, cabbages? Each had their own following, and some debates became violent. Snowball gave brilliant speeches, whereas Napoleon was better at canvassing support between meetings. In one of the meetings, Snowball proposed the creation of a windmill, which he had created detailed designs after reading several books that belonged to Mr. Jones. Napoleon was against the windmill, as he was against everything Snowball wanted to do. The entire farm was deeply divided by the idea of building a windmill. It was going to be a huge project. Napoleon argued the focus should be on food production and not the windmill. In one of the meetings where Snowball was pontificating about the value of the windmill, there was a huge uproar. Napoleon called up the dogs he had been educating in private. The dogs ran Snowball off the farm and managed to terrify all the other animals. With Snowball gone, Napoleon took the stage. He announced that the Sunday morning meetings would come to an end as they were a waste of time. All questions related to the operations of the farm would be resolved by a special committee of the pigs. The animals would still assemble on Sunday, salute the flag, sing Beast of England, and receive their orders for the week. There would be no more debates. The animals were unhappy about this. However, their complaints were overruled by the growls of Napoleon's dogs. Later, Squealer went around the farm and spoke to all the animals, saying that he trusts every animal appreciates He trusts that every animal appreciates Napoleon's sacrifices, taking the extra labor on himself. Leadership is not a pleasure, but hard work and a deep, heavy responsibility. So this is Squealer's little manipulations. This one was great, and I want to get it right. He would be only too happy to let you make your decisions for yourself, but sometimes you might make the wrong decisions, comrades, and then where would you be? So, you need Napoleon, you're going to make the wrong decisions. At this point, Snowball is painted as a criminal, and it was said that even though he fought bravely, bravery is not enough. The loyalty and obedience are more important. Squealer convinces the animals that without discipline, Mr. Jones would come back and take over the farm. If they continue the Sunday morning debates, it will bring Mr. Jones back. So all fear-based. To all of that, Boxer started his saying of, if Comrade Napoleon says it, then it must be right, and Napoleon is always right. 3 weeks later, Napoleon announced that the windmill would be built and that the extra task would require hard work from everyone. The evening, Squealer explained to the animals that Napoleon had never really opposed the project to build the windmill. On contrary, it was he that was advocating for it in the beginning. He explained that Snowball had stolen Napoleon's plans for the windmill. Napoleon only opposed the windmill to Snowball as a maneuver to get rid of Snowball, as he was a dangerous character and a bad influence. Now that Snowball was out of the way, they could go forward without interference. So that's what I have for chapter 5. A lot going on there.
I see so many parallels in
I know.
what's happening.
I know. It's amazing. I know. Even though it was written, 80 years ago, it's amazing how it just feels like we've looped back somehow. There's gaslighting, there's manipulation, there's fear-based leadership. There's, hey, we're making the decisions for you because you might make the wrong decisions. I mean, you could write this now and say, oh, hey, I wrote it about 2023. And I'd be like, yeah, you did. You nailed it. You nailed it. Yeah. So main characters.
Oh, no, just like I was saying with the enclosure acts that we were saying, like the propaganda was that the commoners weren't using the land properly, and and this was 1800s,
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, you guys are doing it wrong. Let the government step in. We'll step in. We will fix it for you. Don't worry. We got your best interest in mind. Yeah. As Jane Doe said, I grew up learning double thinking, and it is. Some of the notes I had: main characters: Molly defected, Snowball banished, and then Napoleon and his puppies took control of the farm. Squealer came out as manipulative and charismatic, and Boxer, I'd say he kind of fell in line. Boxer kind of fell in line pretty quick. I mean, he was on the side of animalism, but as soon as Napoleon came in, he started saying, "Hey, Napoleon is always right." That became his big saying, was Napoleon is always right. Let's see. Let me hit chapter 6. Let's do chapter 6. Unless you had any other thoughts on chapter 5, the banishment of Snowball or Snowball.
Similar thing, villainizing people who have different ideas.
It is. It really is. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, no, he was the bad guy. And then taking credit taking credit for his ideas. Oh no, that was my idea all along. Like, no, was it? No, that was my idea all along. Yeah, it's gaslighting. It's all of that good stuff. All right, we'll do chapter 6, and then we can wrap up after that. I've got a little bit here on chapter 6. The chapter opens with the animals working 60-hour weeks throughout the spring and the summer. So now that Napoleon's in, all of a sudden it's 60-hour work weeks. The animals knew that everything they did benefited themselves and those of their kind who would come after them. They were no longer working for a pack of idle, thieving human beings. So they were working 60 hours a week, and they were happy. It was introduced the animals would start working on Sunday. This was, of course, strictly voluntary. However, any animal that did not work would have their rations reduced by half. Work on the windmill was hard, and the animals had to devise a clever way to break the rocks to build the windmill. Boxer, whose strength seemed to match all of the rest of the animals put together, worked tirelessly, hauling rocks for the windmill, led on by his personal motto of "I will work harder, and Napoleon is always right." Throughout the summer, the animals were not bad off. They had no more or less food they had during the time when Mr. Jones ran the farm. As the summer wore on, the shortages of paraffin, oil, nails, string, dog biscuits, as well as tools, seeds, and machinery. One Sunday morning, Napoleon announced that the animal farm would engage in trade with neighboring farms to acquire certain materials. He was making an arrangement to sell a stack of hay, part of the year's wheat crop, and later, if needed, some of the eggs. So all of a sudden, he's selling their food. Every Monday, Mr. Whymper, and I might be misspelling that, visited the farm as had been arranged, and worked as a broker on commission between Animal Farm and the outside world. It was noted that the humans hated Animal Farm even more now than ever as it was prospering, because obviously the animals are working 60 hours a week, 7 days a week. Around the time the pigs moved into the farmhouse, this caused the animals to remember an early resolution against animals living in the farmhouse. To this, Squealer was able to convince them that there was no resolution against this, and it was necessary for the pigs to have a quiet place to work because they were the brains of the farm. The houses suited to the dignity of the leader, a term that Squealer had taken to when speaking of Napoleon. This led the animals to return to the 7 commandments, the 4th stating that no animal should sleep in a bed with sheets. Of course, none of the animals remembered the part about sheets, as it had been added by Squealer in secrecy, and of course, any complaints beyond that were settled by the growling of the dogs. As autumn arrived, the animals were tired but happy, given the trades that were made. Food was more scarce than before. Overall, the animals were proud of the work they had done on the windmill, despite it being exhausting. Of course, by November, high winds and rain caused the windmill to collapse. Even though the collapse was caused by the weather and the fact that the walls were too skinny, Napoleon blamed Snowball for the collapse, accusing him of sneaking in at night and sabotaging the project. So that was chapter 6. I feel like that was the down, right? That was the downfall. Yeah, as Jane Doe said, all food people were producing was taken from them and sold to other countries. Yeah, right. Farmer Lenin, Christ brings a sword. Exactly. And it was supposed to be Farmer Lenin. Yeah, right. Yeah, we sold all the food and now everyone's hungry. But you're working for yourselves now, so you're going to work harder and you're going to love it, which is one of the themes, right? That is one of the themes throughout the book, especially this, I think, chapter was the big turn, right? Snowball had just taken power, and all of a sudden things seemed to turn for the worse.
I got quite emotional when the windmill, like all of that hard effort and work, just
yeah, it just collapsed.
And it almost makes me like the real kind of cynic in me almost like wonders, was it actually just the weather, or maybe did they actually purposely destroy it just to give the animals another thing to focus on, so that they were too tired to really consider and really think about what the situation was going on? Like was it intentional, or was it really an accident?
And it could have been, and it's interesting because in the movie it shows Mr. Jones blowing up the windmill, But in the book, they sort of said it was the weather that did it. And even though Napoleon blames Snowflake for destroying it, you have to wonder, had Snowflake built it, or Snowball built it, would he have built it better? Because they were saying the walls were too thin. Would his designs, because he seemed to be the brains, and they sort of stole his design, would it have held up versus Napoleon maybe didn't quite have the engineering savvy and just stole the design? Yeah, and we've got
Everything was blamed. Collective destruction. Yeah, everything was blamed on inside enemies.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Everything was blamed on the inside. Oh no, it was Snowball came back. It was Snowball destroyed it. Like, no, that little piggy's not taking down the windmill. Yeah, and you see the work days getting longer, and then you're talking like chapter 2, 3, they're talking about how there was so much food, it was plentiful, and now everyone's kind of starting to get hungry, and it's starting to get cold, and working longer hours. And then of course you got the pigs moving into the house, changing the rules, and everyone's like, wait a minute, I thought that was against the rules. You're like, but no, look at the rules, it says that. It's almost like searching Wikipedia now. It keeps changing. Like, wait a minute, I thought it said that. No, it doesn't say that anymore.
It's something I'm a bit worried about with AI, because a lot of people are just using AI to amalgamate and put out information, and so the truth is mixed in with the not so true. And what's going to happen in 30 years' time? All generally available knowledge to the public is going to be so muddied. No one's going to know what's true and what's not, and then that puts all of us at a disadvantage because only one select group may have, and so I'm sort of like hoarding hard copy books for stuff now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. No, you have to. I mean, we go to antique stores and I buy dictionaries whenever I can find them at the antique stores, because you can flip open some words and be like, that's changed. Hey, that word's changed. It's amazing how much the language is changing, and they don't make a big announcement, but okay, hey, this year we changed the definitions of these 15 words. You just look like that's not what it used to mean. But no, absolutely, AI. I think I hit on that. I touched on that in a couple videos, and maybe a million more videos need to be made on it. But absolutely, when you look at stuff like Chat GPT or any of the generative AI, there's a lot of generative AI out there, and I think that's the future. Is it writes so well that you don't notice when it's wrong, and sometimes it's just completely wrong. Absolutely, yeah, it can be. And even in the warning of the book we're reading, Animal Farm, those that took the time to educate sort of do better than those that didn't. But when you're just saying, hey, give me the answer, and AI gives you an answer, how are you going to know what part was wrong and what part was made up, as you had said, and what part's intentionally wrong? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it'll get more difficult.
Yeah, mate. So I mean, fair enough if that happens, but can we trust the institutions that are going to come forward and say, no, don't worry about it, we actually have, like, are we going to be able to trust them? And
no.
So
I'm going with no. I'm jumping with no on that one right away. Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. They're going to have their own motives.
Mate. Oh, mate.
Yeah.
I like what
it's
Jane Doe's saying here. It describing the early years after 1917 follows it step by step. That's what we were sort of discussing before with the parallels.
Yeah. No, and I'll have to read that. One, Jane. Jane, you could join the book club, and we could all read and dig into. If there's a book I think you mentioned on that follows 1917, the events, I'd be happy to. It sounds plenty dystopian for the Dystopian Book Club. Not that everything has to be dystopian. Most stuff is now. We just call it current affairs, but I didn't want the current affairs book club.
That's funny.
Yeah, Animal Farm follows it. No, thank you. No,
Thanks,
absolutely.
Daniel.
Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, Strangely Strange, for sticking with me. Welcome to the book club. This was the official
Thanks
first
for your
meeting.
time.
Yeah, let's
Thanks for your time, guys.
figure out. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for everybody in chat. Let's figure out if we want to meet in a week or if we want to just push it into January, end of January. We could be a little flexible with the day and time. I know few folks couldn't make it, and that's okay. We'll have another meeting, and we'll dig into the other half of the book, right? So if you had already read the book and you wanted to be in the book club and you couldn't make it tonight, save it, right? Because we can recap and we can close it. We'll close it out on the next video, and then we'll jump into the next book. I was thinking Brave New World. That's another fun one. But I'm open with the suggestions. We'll keep it a democracy.
One of the books that I finished recently, it really altered my version of how I view utopia, was a book by Sydney University professor Bruce Pascoe. I can even type it in the chat.
Yeah.
It's called Dark Emu. And
okay.
what he
I don't know that
does
one.
is he just basically has spent 30 years just looking through all primary sources of pre-colonialization / colonization of Australia. And he's been able to kind of piece together a little bit, particularly in the more populated states, and just describes there's even some photos and such too, because, it was kind of around that sort of area. And yeah, he's actually completely rewritten the archaeology textbooks in regards to Indigenous archaeology, and also it's challenging the conception of the emergence of agriculture because of a lot of the stuff. Yeah, so really, Dark Emu by Bruce. I'm not necessarily saying for this, but if you guys want some kind of like...
I read a lot. So I could definitely see dumping into that. No,
really absolutely changed my view of what utopia looks like. I'm not saying that I want to go back to like pre-colonial Indigenous times, but just...
No, understood. It's important to know. I think it's important to know how we got to where we are, the good and the bad. I agree on that. Absolutely.
All right.
Strange.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. We'll wrap it up there, and we'll have another one. We'll do a part 2. All right. Thanks. As always, yes.
Should we do this one maybe in a week because it's a small novel, or do you think you want to... What should we...
I'm good either way. Yeah, just email me, let me know. I said there were a couple other people that wanted to be here but couldn't. So if I'm good with next Sunday, otherwise it's going to end up being like a month from now or something like that. After we go through Christmas and New Year's, I'm good with next Sunday. So that works for me. But let's figure it out in the next day or 2.
Yeah, sweet. Make a post and an email. I'll keep an eye on them. Yeah,
absolutely. As always, thank you for watching, and we appreciate
Thanks, Janet. Too.
Thanks, Janet. Jamie. Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Appreciate you.